So progress reports, these formal documents that get sent to families at certain times of the year and talk about, is the student on track or not on track to meet their IEP goals by the end of the IEP? We're going to cover that in this video. But those are really the tip of the iceberg about how we monitor progress throughout the year. And our legal requirements, let's talk about those around IEP goals. So we say this is the student's goal to get to this number, this degree of performance by the end of the IEP. This is how we're going to measure it using this tool. This is how often we're going to measure it. So we have to follow through on that and collect the actual data, but we have more of an obligation beyond that. And it comes back to that legal requirement around providing the student with a free and appropriate public education. And the Supreme Court in 2017, in this Andrew F. ruling, clarified a requirement to be essentially looking at that data around the student's performance on a regular basis. So monthly is what makes sense with the way that IEP goals are written, and saying, is the student on track or not? And then if they're not, we are on the hook to do something about that, not sit idly by and watch the student fail to be on track to meet that IEP goal, but to change instruction, change our strategies so that the student is on track to meet that IEP goal, essentially. So that's our constant obligation throughout the year. So these progress reports are really just the tip of the iceberg of how we're looking at data and knowing if the student is or isn't on track, and also how we communicate with parents. I mean, this is the minimum bar as far as our communication with parents, 4 times a year, essentially, is what it boils down to with these progress reports. But really, it should be, as we're monitoring the student's progress throughout the year, we should be talking to the parents about that more than 4 times. So with the rest of the video, with that addressed, I am going to talk about the requirements around these official progress report documents. So when, what, and how. When is they need to be sent to families as often as progress is reported to general education students in the district, essentially report cards. In our districts at the time this video is being recorded, for the most part, that's going to be 4 times to send these progress reports. So what we need to say quantitatively, what is the progress made toward the IEP goals, so that kind of their recent present performance on that goal. And then are they or are they not on track to meet their IEP goal by the end of the year? So there's an example here. So on the last 3 reading probes, Holden read a median of 47 words per minute. So that is our quantitative description of how is he performing right now. And Holden has made insufficient progress toward meeting his goal this year. So that is the statement of the extent to which that progress is sufficient to enable the student to achieve their goal by the end of the year. Okay, and I'm gonna model showing you actually putting these into SpEd forms. And then the how. So this is a big deal. So you're sending, let's just for the sake of this video, say you have 4 progress reports to do throughout the year. You could do 4 written formal progress reports. So what I'm going to show you in SpEd forms, putting together an IEP progress report, that formal document. You could send 4 of those home in the year. Or you could do 1 orally at the IEP meeting. You're already sharing the student's progress at the IEP meeting, right? You're talking about how they're performed on their goals. So that could count as one of the progress reports. And then the other 3 could be these written formal reports. So pros and cons. This one, when you do them all written, all 4 of them, and you do that across your entire caseload, you don't need to worry about which students did or didn't have IEP meetings in the last grading period or the last term, because you just, for your entire caseload, say it's 15 kids, for those 15, you send written progress reports every time their report cards go home. It's just simple black and white for you. But it does make a little bit of extra work. So what I do recommend is that for your whole caseload, you do this the same way. Because if some students are written one way and some students are another, it's going to be chaotic for you. So the other thing you could do is across your whole caseload, just you always write your plan for progress reports as though one of those oral during the annual IEP meeting is what you're going to do, and the rest are going to be written. So when the student had an IEP meeting in the last term grading period, you're not sending a written progress report for them. And it's that simple. So like I said, be consistent across your caseload, and then either option is really going to work for you. So where do we actually write, before we actually dig into both those options, oral and written, where would you write out this plan that I'm referencing? So on the IEP in SpEd forms, on the first page, student information, there is a statement about progress reporting. And let's see what this one is. Progress will be reported through 4 written reports concurrent with the issuance of term grades and 1 annual IEP. Let's look at the other options here. Yeah, this is a good one. In the dropdown is what I used. Progress will be reported 3 times per year in writing and once verbally during the annual IEP meeting. This is as often as progress is reported for general education peers. So that, I think, is the most common one you'll see in IEPs. They're saying 3 times per year we're sending those written reports, and once verbally during the IEP meeting. That's our progress report plan. So there are other options in those dropdowns. Like I said, that would be this option right here, the one that we just picked. So before we get into written progress reports, let's just cover that oral piece quick. So you're at the annual IEP meeting, you're sharing with the parents how the student performed on their goals. So you're reporting and sharing orally. Is that good enough? No, unfortunately not. It's been made clear by the state regulators, auditors. We have to document. It's not as much work as putting together this formal written report. I know it sounds weird to say we're doing an oral report and we have to document it in writing, but we still have to show some evidence in the paper trail, essentially, that oral report was made to the parents. So that can be put in one of 3 places. In the meeting notes, so in your IEP meeting agenda, when it comes to discussing each goal, you see it's highlighted in yellow here. Let me just open this up so you can see it a little more clearly. There's some comments here to show the progress reporting statement. Or in the record of team meeting, so when you finalize the sign-in sheet in SpEd forms, there's a space for meeting notes, and you could write up the progress on goals there. Or in the PLAF of the IEP. So it's not by default put in there, but you could talk about the progress on the most recent IEP goal in that area here. So obviously, like what I've said, the best case scenario for you is to do this consistently the same way, put it in the same spot across your whole caseload, just get in a rhythm and a habit. So the easiest one is going to be on that meeting agenda. The other ones, you would have to deliberately add more of a step. People aren't typically writing a lot of notes in the meeting notes part of the record of team meeting. For PLAF, this would be a separate sentence that isn't in our typical templates. So you would have to remember to add something here. Well, in the meeting agenda, meeting notes at the IEP meeting, you're already typically jotting down things like this. So this to me takes less mental remembering to write it into the meeting notes. But in any case, pick one and try and be consistent with that, because it'll be easier on your brain. So that is just that paper trail evidence of our oral progress report. Now let's get into these formal written progress reports in SpEd forms. So let's back up to the IEP again. And right here, IEP progress report is what I want. So it will show you, and if this is blank, you can pick the finalized version of the IEP for that year. And the goals will show up here for you. and then some space to do your progress report for each goal. I'm not going to go through all of these. This is just a fake student, obviously, with a bunch of goals. I'm just going to do one. So I would put the date. I'm just making up a date here when I'm sending out the progress report. What we want to do, by the way, I'm not pulling this out of my brain. I'm following this. Indicate the date of the report. Click Show Objectives button. So let's do that next. Show Objectives. And it puts multiple in here. And this is saying that we should keep the objective that is relevant to the current marking period that we're in. So whatever's closest. So let's say that this was, October 2023. I'm sending it out in November. Sure. And then that's the objective as it was written in the IEP. What's next? Review the student's progress monitoring data graph. Based on your determination, select an appropriate checkbox. So I had pulled up the student's graph. Well, I'm going to show a fake student in EduClimber that has nothing to do with what we're doing right now. So I also have EduClimber in anonymous mode, which is why I can't see any faces. But I'm going to click. So I have my students' interventions, their graphs here. This is showing me the interventions. What I want to do is click. I'm showing you this because we're going to print it, by the way. You're not typically doing this, but I'm going to click interventions here and switch to monitors. And these are the actual graphs that are connected to those interventions. So I'm going to click these little 3 dots, little kebab, it's called that, by the way, and say print summary. And this is a nice parent-friendly, and it shows the actual scores. This is a nice printable version of the IEP graph that I'm going to send home with my progress report. So you would print these for the IEP meeting. You would also print these to send with your written progress reports. But I'm going to look at my graph and say, is the student making progress? Now, this graph has nothing to do with the fake goal that's in SpEd Forms right now, but let's roll with it. So student isn't making progress here. So I'm going to check the box for insufficient progress. Let's go back to case manager resources. What do we do next? So describe students' present performance with quantitative data and a statement of the extent to which progress made enables the student to meet their goal by the end of the IEP year. So what I'm going to do, just to help my brain, is copy and paste these in here and then just make sure that they're accurate. So Jake has scored a median of 67. Oh, so this one's about writing as an example, and then the example I copied is about writing too. Imagine that. What a coincidence. Okay. Fake has scored a median of 67 on her last 3, so that wouldn't be accurate. Baseline score 23 to 33. So more realistic would be 25 on her last 3 written expression probes. So that is me talking about current performance. So if the goal is to go from 23 to 33 and we're on objective 2 in the IEP, it's been a while and we've only increased our median to 25. So that makes sense. We're not sufficient progress. If Brenda continues making progress at the current rate, it is expected that she will not meet this goal by the end of the IEP here. I'm going to click save. And when I'm done, I would finalize this and print it. And again, I want to print the graphs and send them home. And I also want to print, it's optional, this part, but it's a good idea. We have this link here to understanding your child's graphs. So this is a 1-page handout that explains to parents how to interpret, what are those blue lines and green lines when we're looking at this, because that is a helpful way to equip the parents to understand the data. And lastly, I just pulled up EduClimber and walked you through that, but let's click here. So this is our interventions page about EduClimber, where we track students' IEP goals, and creating interventions is the first heading. But when it, we're not doing that right now. We're managing, overseeing interventions that are already happening. So printing graphs is what I was following. So how to print graphs from EduClimber. It's 1 minute long. Shows you how to get here by doing what I did there. For FastBridge probes, you can just print those directly from FastBridge, and it'll be a little bit faster for you. That's why we put that there. And that's, just to cover it again, what I would actually be sending to the parents is the printed version, once I'm done, of this official written progress report. And I would send the graphs for the student's IEP goals so the parent could see and actually have the data. And then if not required, but it would be a good idea, and you could just keep a stack of these, right? This thing doesn't change, of this understanding your child's graphs so that the parent has that to reference. And just coming back to it, again, this is the tip of the iceberg as far as how often we should be actually looking at the students' data to make sure that we're providing them with FAPE, and then 2, communicating with the parents about that. So the pieces here about reviewing data and visually analyzing and adding phase lines to show that we're making an instructional change or a change to the students' supports, strategies, accommodations. That should be happening throughout the year on at least a monthly basis.